Hello and welcome to the weekly top 10 list. This week, it's me and Francesca. Hey Francesca, how's it going?
Hello.
Glad to have you here. And we're gonna be going down our list of the 10 things Trump should have been impeached and convicted and removed and banned and banished to an island or buried underground or whatever for. A mix of some serious, maybe some not so serious things. Obviously, he did a lot of bad stuff, but if it was up to us, what would he have finally faced the ultimate consequences for? And I wanna thank you before we get into the list for being a member of level 2 or level 3 and getting access to this. Thank you so much, we really do appreciate that. We hope that you enjoy this little bit of extra content we do for you. And of course, we are always down for your suggestions for lists. So feel free, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, you can comment down below and leave it and I'll check. And perhaps you could get a shout out as the progenitor of a list for next week. So that said, Francesca, would you like to start us off with your number 5?
Progenitor.
I should be impeached for using that word.
Progenitor. Yes. First of all, I just want to say the premise of this top 10 list is I like it. It's bad, and I'm leaving. Goodbye. No, I am definitely not of the mind that we should impeach or should have impeached him over a bunch of stuff. I'm of the mind he should have never held office in the first place.
Well, I disagree with you there.
But yeah, sure, that's up for discussion. The problem is once he's in power, it's like, oh, we elected a fascist, and that's this. A lot of this is what we get. I'm definitely not of the mind that like if we had brought a case that had all of these things that suddenly the Senate Republicans would change their mind. No, nothing.
Nothing on this top 10 list will provide us with the magic powers necessary to produce that. Unfortunately, I wish that it was otherwise. But anyway, whether it would have worked or not, this is our little hope. Our little hope. What would we want? So what's your first little hope?
My little hope is just the use of the long tie. No, I'm kidding. No.
It's too long, buddy.
It's too long. Impeached. No, he should have been impeached for violating the emoluments clause, which says that you can't get rich off of your own position in office, especially the executive branch, right? And he consistently had members of the military, members of White House staff, like Mike Pence's staff, stay in his hotels when they were traveling. One of the many ways, obviously his kids running his business and yet being part of the government and making money from that was always shady. But this explicit like, when you visit Ireland, you have to stay in the Trump resort or the Trump whatever and eat their crappy food and have a bunch of ketchup on the steak. Like that to me was like a no-brainer. You can't do that, buddy. You can't. And no, that's not okay. You've got to actually relinquish that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah. Right out the gate, great minds think alike, because my number 5 was personally enriching himself through the presidency. And the reason I chose is both because corruption is bad, okay? We should do something about it. But also, this is one of the ones that it's very specific in the Constitution. You can't do this.
Yeah.
But the other stuff is like, we'd have to actually make a case. This is in there. And they couldn't get him on any of this stuff. So yeah, you cited a bunch. There's others as well, but like no, the enriching himself, the emoluments, the foreign leaders staying in his properties, the jacking up of prices before he sends people there so that he's making more money. It's madness. It's not acceptable, or at least it shouldn't have been. So that was my number 5 as well. What's your number?
Agreed. Okay, number 4. The family separation stuff, I think, was a bridge too far, even for this, wannabe fascist. But yeah, when you separate children at the border, when you cannot locate their parents, when you've got no plan for reuniting 3-year-old kids with their parents, when there is audio being released of these kids crying and screaming for their parents and swearing that they have the number memorized of their family members in the States. And if they could just call them, I mean, like, I'm gonna cry right now, but that is criminal. It is absolutely criminal. That's a high crime. That's a misdemeanor. You had no plan to bring these children back to their family members. You get impeached. That's it.
And it wasn't just a consequence, it was the goal to produce this disgusting, cruel, horrific thing.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go from your number 4, which is incredibly serious, to mine, which is admittedly, some people are gonna be bothered by this being on the list at all, let alone above the violations of the emoluments clause, but I would have tried to impeach him and convict him over Sharpiegate, honestly, because that's fucking insane, you crazy bastards. How could you do that? We just moved on. He drew with a Sharpie on a map of a hurricane to cover for a lie. And I get that doesn't kill anyone, that doesn't bankrupt anyone. But at a certain point, there has to be a line that's too crazy to be acceptable. If he's doing that, there's no way that's the only thing he's doing like that. That is obviously part of a brain that is so broken that you can't trust it, even with things as simple as paper or Sharpies.
Yeah.
And so if you lie about that, God only knows what other official facts and documentation you're lying about. It's just too crazy. If I at one point in high school, I managed a toy store in the mall called Wound Up. And one of the main job things you had to do was we sold these monkeys that their hands like clasped together so you could hang them from things, just like a monkey. And so you would hang
like you and I now. We're just monkeys.
You're just monkeys. So we would like stand in the hallway of the mall with monkeys hanging from our arms. If one of my arm monkey hanging people Sharpied on an official document to cover up for a lie, I would have fired them. And that is arguably a less serious position than POTUS. So you can't do it. You can't do it. So Sharpie.
God, what kind of manager? This is the worst toy store manager ever. Have a little fun.
The entire chain went under, but I had fun with it anyway.
And then Toys R Us eventually went under. Man, remember toys? Everything's fine.
My whole life is board games, which are effectively just toys for adults. But anyway, what's your number 3?
Agreed. Well, similar to that, I guess, the handling of Puerto Rico, right? The handling of Hurricane Maria and the aftermath and the utter negligence that the Trump administration showed to the people of Puerto Rico. Just throwing bounty at them, like that's done. You're out of here. Sorry, I'm tangled up. You're out of here, impeached. But yeah, I mean, like that's criminal negligence for sure. There's thousands of people who died because in that hurricane. You withheld, I believe, aid that they needed and like made it stipulated on a bunch of other crap. I don't know. I don't remember the details because it's so painful. But I definitely would have impeached him over that.
Yeah. Same as like Trump's reaction, to what happened in Louisiana. Like you, at a certain point, you can fail bad enough that becomes criminal. Like effectively, like the Capitol, like there were people who resigned from the Capitol Police over the 6th. So like we get that there are consequences for things. Maybe we should figure out who should suffer them. My number 3 was actually close to yours. Mine was family separation. Because it was such an intentional thing that caused so much needless human suffering. Because it can't be fixed, there will be kids that will never be reunited with their families as a result of this. The fact that they lost kids, a president who loses kids shouldn't get to still be president anymore. It was purposeful and needless cruelty. I wish that they had done more about that. There was a little bit of investigation or whatever, but I understand that was before they took over the House. But that was one of the darkest moments of his first term and definitely merited better consequences.
I mean, yeah, it was an international war crime. I mean, not war crime, but it was an international crime. It was like a human rights violation on UN scale that they were raising red flags at. So
exactly. What's your number 2?
My number 2.
He had toilet paper in his shoe.
Yeah. When you toilet paper, putting the squeeze on Raffensperger, right? Putting the squeeze on the Georgia Attorney General, Secretary of State, to find him 7,000 more, whatever it was. All I need is 7,800. No, you can't do that. See, because that's not how democracy works. You can't just call up. And we didn't impeach him on that. That was like right up until like right before January 6th that we found it. What was it, John? Like a week, 2 weeks before the siege?
2 weeks before, yeah.
Like insane.
Yeah, it was definitely still in people's minds, but I guess when he sends the violent mob in, it's like, oh, I sort of find the phone calls quaint at that point. But yeah, you're right. And he's being investigated on that. So maybe there will be consequences. Maybe
there will be consequences. Absolutely. But what, like, I do think we cannot let go of all the things that happened, especially the things that had to do with this election, because it's absolutely true that like there's now a blueprint for and I'm curious, I'm curious to see if others will be able, like, is this just a je ne sais Trump? Is it just, you're right? Like, is it just the grace extended to a megalomaniacal celebrity billionaire, like emblem of white male privilege? Like, is it just him, or can other people like bite off that snack? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I hope so. I think a lot of people, whether they're talking about it or not, do assume that to some degree, maybe not totally, that it is. But I don't know. Marjorie Taylor Greene's popular.
Yeah, I mean, people like Ted. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene can get that far, sadly. But I think that people like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are like, no, I want to bite off of that. Like, I can do that too, and we have yet to see. I'm not sure. I think there's something uniquely Trump about Trumpism.
I hope so.
I hope.
Well, my number 2 is actually the one that they tried to. Hey, I'm allowed to agree with them. The whole Ukraine thing. Yeah, no, he should have been convicted over that. Like, and they tried, to their credit. And I worry that with his most recent impeachment, that everyone's gonna forget about the first one, but he tried to blackmail a foreign government into launching a sham investigation against who he thought would be his political opponent so that he could win the election. That's not good, and that's not okay. That's really bad. If none of this January stuff had happened, if he hadn't done all the stuff in November, December with the election cases, that still would have been one of the worst things a president had ever done vis-a-vis an election. Yeah. Now it's like a distant second, but that was really bad and really well established at that point. He skated, with only one Republican actually voting to convict. Like, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski were okay with that. They were okay with him doing that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was really bad and totally merited conviction.
Yeah, it definitely needed. I know this is like impeachment or conviction at this point.
Anything?
I don't know.
Anything.
Either of them.
What about your number 1?
Number 1,
the thing that pisses you off the most.
That doesn't. I think I know your number 1, so I'm gonna sort of like deliberately not use your number 1.
You can use it.
I don't want to skirt your thunder.
Okay.
Okay, fine. I'll use it. I was gonna say, I do think that the murder of, I was trying to remember his name, but Michael Reinhold, the so-called Antifa member who, he was basically working security for Black Lives Matter and did kill a member of the Patriot Prayer and then was summarily assassinated by police. Basically, and Trump, I think, admitted that he put the hit out on this guy who never saw a day in court, who was never brought to actual justice. There was no investigation. He was just murdered. You can't just murder people. You can't just assassinate people because they're part of your political opponent. So that was really chilling, and that I think we should investigate more. And I definitely think that is not okay. That's a crime. That's a misdemeanor. That is being the head of a mafia.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't even remembered that one. That was Duterte shit right there. That was.
Yeah.
It's not like he called up a detective, was like, go kill that guy, but he made it clear he wanted this guy killed. They went and killed him very obviously, and then he talked about it positively. That's not acceptable. That's not remotely acceptable.
No, that's exactly right. that's death. I was just watching Judas and the Black Messiah about the killing of Fred Hampton, and we can still get back to that. Like, this is just some like some FBI BS, but like the ways that they murdered political leaders, and that was Trump's. That was like not even the FBI. That was just Trump saying, "We want this guy dead." Which, imagine what that said to the Patriot Prayer folks. Imagine what that said to all of his far right extremists.
Oh, I'm sure they got the message. Yeah. Well, my number one, and notably, it's not on your list, so this didn't bother you at all. You were totally okay with all of this. Let that be noted in the history books. The number one, and there shouldn't be a single person watching this that couldn't predict what this is gonna be, the response to the pandemic. Yeah. There has never been a president who has failed worse and more people have died as a result of it than this. Like, presidents have failed in a lot of different ways, but at a certain point, your failure becomes murder. Like, we can say maybe he didn't intend to kill any particular person, but and it wasn't a one-time failure. He failed and failed and failed and failed, with many people dying in between, lots of advice being given, clear, obvious things he could do, criticism for the bad choices he was making, and he just kept failing and failing and failing, and more people died. It's gonna be the US Civil War death toll in the end. We will have surpassed any of the worst conflicts of American history, and it's not illegal. Like, the guy who he left a refrigerator open and vaccine spoiled will suffer worse legal consequences than Trump in the end.
Yes.
That's crazy. Like, you get a lot of power and a lot of privileges when you become a leader, but there's also supposed to be responsibilities. And at a certain point, you don't get to do what you did and not spend the rest of your life behind bars. And I know that he won't. It's sad that he won't, but if he gets to do this and suffer no consequences, there's nothing a president can do I really imagine in our life that could ever be worse. So he should have 100% been impeached for it, convicted, banned from office, sent to jail, locked up. That's it. You never see him again.
No, absolutely, man. We had a 9/11 commission. How many 9/11s is this?
Don't try to get in on this. You didn't put it on your list, so you clearly don't care about it.
I don't care. No, but this is what I was gonna say. It's like, it's too big. It's too important. And so, like, on one hand, I'm devastated by what we saw on January 6th, and he should absolutely have been convicted. But like, I also want a full accounting of all the missteps under COVID. Like, we absolutely need that. There needs to be justice, and thank God there aren't 4 more years. How many more people would have died? But not only that, just being told time and again that your reality is not reality. These people aren't dying from COVID. What? What are you talking about? Just that debasement that we've gone through, and yeah, I agree with you. I agree. It's criminal. Yeah. It is criminal. Like, at what point is it criminal? At this point, at 500,000, maybe at 100,000 deaths, it was criminal.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of bad things about his presidency. If COVID had never happened, he would have been a terrible president. But with COVID, he's the worst. I don't think that there's really a debate to be had there. Because George W. Bush would not have done what Trump did.
No,
sure, he would have flubbed it. Yes. More people would have died than necessary, but he would not have done all of this stuff. He would have put a mask on, and he would have done it so that it covered up his eyes by accident, and we all would have laughed at him. Yes. But he'd have put the mask on.
Yes, he would have said it was serious. They still would have opened up, businesses and tried to put the market needs first, but he wouldn't have been talking about injecting yourself with bleach.
They would have used it to attack China in some way. They would have done xenophobic. There would have been lots of bad stuff, but they would have actually treated it like a crisis, and we didn't get that. So that's my number one, and I assume was in the teens for Francesca. So anyway,
how dare you bitch, you bitch.
Francesca, as always, thank you for joining me for this.
Thank you so much, John.
And thank you everybody for being members and making this possible. We enjoy doing these. We hope you enjoy it too. We'll see you in the next one.